Hey everybody, welcome to the first meeting of spring quarter. Sorry I can't be there to join you. I'm away on sabbatical if new people don't know yet. Yeah, I hope everybody has a really great start to the quarter. This is my last couple months here. I come back on June 12th, I think. So I'm trying to make the most of it and really work really hard on the paper that I'm hoping to I don't think I'll finish it this year, especially because I just invited a co-author who's kind of slow in terms of giving feedback, but at least make a pretty big dent in it and get to the point where I've done as much as I can. So I started these little writing groups here, actually, where we just sit in a room together and do work for like 3 to 5 hours, and it's really great. So I'm making a lot of progress. So I think this is right now the most productive part of sabbatical for me. So it feels nice. It's also nice because I have all my major talks out of the way, so I'm able to just focus on my writing. But I wanted to share a couple of announcements. First, Allison, our postdoc, she had a paper under review that gave kids a robot toy to play with, and showed that when girls get this experience with this robot toy, they program the robot toy using their phones, that they end up being more interested in learning about programming and robots than if they don't get this experience. And the same is not true for boys. They don't really seem to need that experience to be interested in it already. And these are 6-year-olds. And it's a pretty cool paper, partly because it shows the role of experience, which is in line with some of the review paper findings that we had from last year. And it's the first paper that we published using the toys that we used at Pause on Science for the last couple of years. So those of you who've been there heard about it. We go to Pacific Science Center and use and show kids how to program using these robot toys. So we actually used them for a study, and the paper's now in press at Journal of Experimental Child Psychology, I think it's called, or maybe Journal of Experimental Child Development. I don't know. I'm not really well versed in the developmental journals, but luckily Allison is. It was interesting because last week we had here at Casbis, we had an op-ed writing workshop. And so we had someone from the New York Times come, and each of us had to write really short, like a 400, 500 word op-ed. And then he went through and critiqued each of them and gave us feedback. And then, everybody else got to say stuff too. And this is actually the same person who had given me feedback on an op-ed in the fall. So those of you who are around remember that I was writing like many, many drafts. I ended up writing about 40 drafts of this op-ed, and I gave him, and it was about the review paper, and I gave him the drafts, and everybody had been telling me it was pretty good, and then he came back and he's like, oh, this totally we need to overhaul this. And he ended up just being like, don't we already know that computer science has a masculine culture? Like, what are we learning here? So he was really nice, but he was pretty critical of it. So it was the same guy. So I was like, oh, great. This is going to be hard for me to think of what I can write, because he doesn't really seem to think that the last op-ed I had written was really novel. So anyway, but I ended up thinking about writing it based on Allison's paper, since it had just been under review and almost in press. And so I wrote up a little story about Cheryl Kaiser's daughter, who's Cheryl Kaiser's another faculty member in our department, and how I gave her a electronic circuits toy, and she ended up loving it, even though I think everybody was kind of surprised she loved it. And she's taking like a robotics camp this summer, in part because of the toy that I gave her. So I wrote about that story, and then how it is similar to the findings that Allison has in her paper, and then also talk more broadly about how to get girls interested in these fields based on what we learned in writing the review paper last year. And so I was like, oh, I don't know if this is going to be a good op-ed or not. But anyway, they ended up really, really liking it. So it was good. I was like, oh, good. I learned from that experience in the fall about, I think, what actually makes a good op-ed. And it was pretty funny to watch other fellows who are trying to write an op-ed for the first time and have him be like, why is this novel? And then they're like, what do you mean, why is this novel? I'm writing a whole book on this, so it's just a totally different world writing an op-ed than it is writing for research, and things that you think are novel or interesting or nobody believes in research, in an op-ed, it could just not tell a good story. So I ended up saying the same message that I said in the fall, but I ended up doing it through toys, and that ended up being like a really a more interesting way to do it for an op-ed. So Allison and I are thinking about submitting it. We're going to try to spruce it up a little bit and see where we can submit it. So it's a good story about my learning how to write an op-ed. I mean, I'm still not there yet, but at least I have moved myself in the direction of knowing what it takes to write an op-ed. And I didn't have to write 40 drafts this time. I think I only wrote 5 or 6, so as improvement. And the only other thing I wanted to say is this should be an exciting quarter because we are going to be evaluating new people to be in the lab for next year. So this weekend is our recruitment weekend with the graduate students, and we're interviewing 2 graduate students for our lab. So you might see them. We usually like to give them a lab tour, so you might see them walking around lab. Be nice to them. We're trying to recruit them. They're both really great. One's named Quinn, one's named Lucy, and we'll make them both offers if we end up liking them after this weekend. And maybe they'll come, maybe they won't, but they're really great, so we hope that they will come. And then we're also interviewing for new lab managers, so we're looking through resumes right now, and we'll have Helena will be leaving in the summer, and so we're finding someone to replace Helena. So fall quarter should be pretty interesting and busy because we'll have a lot of new people, a lot of new researchers in the lab, so there'll be some new energy and some new projects. So that's all I have for today. So I hope you all have a great meeting, and I'm looking forward to meeting the new RAs when I get back, and hopefully I'll have a chance to meet you over Skype at some point before I get back. But enjoy the beginning of the quarter, and I'll talk to everybody next week.